All right, let's dive right in. If you're prepping for the UPSC exams, you know some dates in history are just different. They're not just dates, they're massive turning points. And today, we're talking about one of the biggest, the Government of India Act of 1858. This wasn't just some new law, you guys. This was the end of an entire era and the dramatic start of a whole new one. So let's get into it. So here's our game plan. We'll start with the historical setup. Then we'll look at the spark that lit the fire, the 1857 mutiny. After that, we'll break down what the act got rid of, what new system it put in place, and finally, we'll talk about why this is still such a massive deal in modern Indian history. Okay, let's set the stage. You've got the East India Company, which started as a trading business, somehow becoming the ruler of huge parts of India for over 100 years. It's a wild story. But by the middle of the 19th century, that whole setup was about to completely fall apart. I mean, that's the real question here, isn't it? How does a private company end up governing millions and then just lose it all? It sounds kind of crazy when you think about it. Well, the Government of India Act of 1858 is the answer to that question. It was a direct response to a system that had just become totally broken. You know, every big change in history needs a trigger, a catalyst. And for the end of company rule, that trigger wasn't some polite debate in Parliament. No way. It was the enormous, violent rebellion of 1857 that shook the British Empire in India to its very core. People had been getting more and more frustrated with the company for years. But the 1857 mutiny? That was the breaking point. It was such a shock, such a wake-up call, that the British government, back in London, realized they couldn't just let a corporation run India anymore. Direct control was now seen as the only path forward. And once things started moving, they moved fast. The mutiny kicks off in 1857. By early 1858, Prime Minister Lord Palmerston is already introducing a bill to transfer power. He actually had to resign, but his successor's government, led by Lord Stanley, quickly brought in a new bill. And get this, they called it an Act for the Better Governance of India. It was passed on August 2nd, 1858. This is just fascinating. This quote comes from the very last meeting of the East India Company's Court of Directors. After 258 years, it was all over. You can almost hear the mix of defiance and maybe a little bitterness in their final message. It's like they're warning the Queen, hey, don't forget who built this for you and don't think it's going to be easy. A really symbolic end of an era. So we get the why. Now let's get into the what. What exactly did this act tear down? Pay close attention here, because for your exams, these specifics are absolutely crucial. Before 1858, the system was this messy thing called dual government. You had the company's court of directors doing one thing, and the British government's board of control doing another. It was confusing, and their goals often clashed. The 1858 Act just swept all of that away. Boom, gone. It created one single direct line of command straight from the British Crown. It was a total overhaul. To put it simply, the Act of 1858 basically hit the reset button. The East India Company's rule? Over. The two groups that made up that confusing dual system, the Court of Directors and the Board of Control, were completely dissolved. And this is a big one. Really unpopular policies like the Doctrine of Lapse, which had made so many Indian rulers angry, were also gotten rid of. All right, so the old system is out. A new one had to be built to replace it. This next part covers the administrative structure that would basically define the entire era of the British Raj. The heart of this new system was a brand new, super powerful job, the Secretary of State for India. This wasn't just some official. This person was a member of the British cabinet. This meant that Indian affairs were now a direct responsibility of the British government itself. And the very first person to hold this job? Lord Stanley, the same guy who introduced the final bill. Now, the Secretary of State wasn't totally alone. A council of 15 members was created to help out. This is a key number to remember, but make no mistake, this was an advisory council. The Secretary of State was the chairman and had the final say, keeping all that power right at the top. This chart lays it out perfectly. At the very top, you have the British monarch. Reporting to them, back in London, is the all-powerful Secretary of State. And then, on the ground in India, the Governor-General gets a new title, Viceroy. He's now the personal representative of the Crown, and he reports directly to the Secretary of State. It was a clear, top-down, centralized system. No more confusion. And the power this person had was just immense. They had total authority over everything related to the administration of India. Every piece of communication between Britain and India had to go through their office. And listen to this.
They could even send secret instructions to the viceroy without even telling their own 15-member advisory council. That tells you everything you need to know about how centralized this new system was designed to be.
Okay, so let's zoom out one last time and talk about the big picture. What was the real long-term legacy of this act for India? Why does it matter so much? At the end of the day, this is the number one takeaway. The Government of India Act of 1858 is the official start of the British Raj. It's the moment India went from being a territory managed by a company to a formal colony, ruled directly by the British government. And this new reality would define life on the subcontinent for the next 90 years, all the way up to independence in 1947. And that brings us to our final thought. The law was literally called an Act for the Better Governance of India. But was it actually better? Well, from the British point of view, better meant more stable, direct, and secure control. For the people of India, though, it's more complicated. Sure, it ended some policies that everyone hated, but it also made imperial rule official. It cemented India's status as a colony and set the stage for the next long, hard phase of the freedom struggle. It's definitely something to think about as you connect this topic to the rest of Indian history.